alternative talk radio. Get ready, America, for Deadline Live with your host, Jack Blood. Deadline Live is the daily wrap-up for those too busy in the daily grind to discern and dissect the news. While the so-called mainstream media buries the truth, Jack Blood uncovers it, exposing the lies that our trusted government officials do not want us to know. And now, please welcome Jack Blood.
Great having you with us today. A special treat for you. 100 minutes with David Icke. Only about 30 of those will be commercials. That keeps us on the air so we can have David with us. David up late tonight with us from across the pond. Great having you, David. Your website, David Icke, ICKE.com. Google it anyway these days. You'll find it. The new book, which is a must-have, a must-read, should be on everybody's shelf. Human Race, Get Off Your Knees. The Lion Sleeps No More. David, I was talking before you came on about staying an open mind and learning from our mistakes here, and growing our consciousness, growing even in our five senses. We've got the reverse of hopium. It's the new hope, and that is the Tea Party, Glenda Dick Arnold, as I call him, Glenda Beckenrich. This is a different brand of Kool-Aid, and I'm getting a lot of my friends who have been, somewhat conservative, not real happy with Obama, writing and saying, well, this is going to save us. This time they're going to save us for sure. I don't know how they can get away with it other than they keep disposing of their hopium addicts and finding new recruits.
Well, I think, we're at a time of a really a fork in the road. We have a choice here where we can go on the way we have with our minds closed, where we let the five senses dominate our sense of who we are and the reality that we're experiencing, and we can go on believing that governments actually are there to serve the people, that the system in general is there to serve the people for the benefit of the people, and the system does make mistakes from time to time, but it's really trying. Or we can open our minds and realize that humanity has been subjected to a mass manipulation going back thousands, probably tens of thousands of more years. And we are just experiencing a particularly potent and powerful point on that journey of manipulation through what we call history, where the system, the control system, is seeking to, if you like, finish the job and create a global state that would make George Orwell wince. And this is where we're standing now, and the key is to open our minds to see what we can't see when our minds are closed. The whole system is there to keep us focused on irrelevancies, on diversions, and to keep our mind so closed that we can only perceive possibility within a very narrow band of what we think is possible. And the whole system is there to turn out herd-like mentalities and a herd-like, public mentality from cradle to grave. It's what the education system's for. It's what the mainstream media's for. And then once you program people through those and other techniques, then peer pressure is putting pressure on people to keep their minds closed and not to expand them because, hey, you're crazy and you can't say that, you're mad, and it becomes a crime to be different. So it really is this cusp where we have massive choices to make about whether we're going to continue down this road we've been on, in which case we'll be heading towards a global fascist state, which will be blatant and in our face eventually. And our children will and grandchildren will live in a state of slavery that is beyond anything that we can imagine. But there's another road which realizes, that we're in a position where we are in a position of mass slavery, and the more subtle the slavery is, the more powerful the slavery is, because you don't rebel about being a slave when you think you're not and you think you're free.
Well, it's the Brave New World approach as opposed to the 1984 approach. We've talked about that for years on this show, and Brave New World Revisited kind of gets into all that. It spells it all out. I mean, this is the Pavlovian method of making you love your slavery, using the carrot and the stick, which is all through your book, David. that people have an incentive and are initiated into being good behaving citizens. And this is why, again, we're on this merry-go-round. But I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, this is going to stop. Eventually, this can't go on. They cannot go on playing this tennis match, can they, David? I mean, they have now hung their hat on, we're going to reform government for the final time, now with the Republicans and the Tea Party. And I have a sneaking suspicion that when these guys go in and try to do business as usual, there's going to be some punishment to be doled out. And finally, I think that people will have realized that there is no choice, there is no change, there is no hope, only that which we can do for ourselves.
Well, you know, it's a holding position that we're looking at, a constant repetition of different holding positions. And what I mean by that can be summed up by what has happened in Israel over the years with so-called roadmaps and peace talks that have been going on recently with the Palestinians and all the rest of it. But while these peace talks go on, the Palestinian homes keep getting bulldozed to the ground. The areas of Palestinian land are being taken more and more and more. We're watching genocide unfold of a people in front of our eyes, but we keep having these holding positions. Now we've got a roadmap. Now we're going to have talks about talks. Now we're going to have talks in America. Now the UN are going to have talks. And while these talks are going on, the same thing unfolds. And this is exactly what's happening collectively. What you have is a situation of apparently changing presidents, apparently changing parties, apparently new ideas, change. We've got change. We just had a new leader of the Labour Party in Britain elected called Ed Miliband, and he's now head of Tony Blair's party, which is now in opposition, the Labour Party. And they've just spent 10 years or more devastating this country's economy, devastating its freedoms and civil rights, really basic freedoms. And now he stood up this week and said, this party stands for change, so off we go again. And while we go on buying this stuff, Jack, what's happening in the background, the same with peace talks about the Israeli-Palestinian situation, is it's business as usual all the time, and incessantly more and more freedoms are taken away, more and more taxes come in, more and more control, and we have to reach a point, and surely we're close, I think you're right, where enough people are going to say, hold on a second, I've heard this before, I've heard this over and over and over again, and we need to look at this in a completely different way and not just keep buying it. And I have sympathy with the Tea Party situation in America and how people are starting to say, hey,
decentralized. They get it. They're starting to get it, but they're following, again, the usual demagogues. David, another break here. When we come back, I'm going to ask you to back off your mic, your telephone a little bit. My producer says it's just a little bit fuzzy or overdriven, so we'll fix that when we come back. More with David Icke, davidicke.com. The new book is fantastic. We'll get into that as we push through the show today. Stay with us. Well, consciously or unconsciously, John J.B. Bell has been on our show from Widespread Panic. He's awake. You can hear it in the music. David Icke is with us today, and in just a few minutes I've got to go to one of my sponsors. So, David, you could help me with that. This is a segment 2 times a week that we dedicate to the old garbage in, garbage out. That is the poisoning and takeover of our food, our water, our air, what to do about it. We had a lot of these people that supported Obama thinking that, that we were going to get environmentalism, we were going to get good, clean food. Instead, he's hired the whole team from Monsanto to oversee our agriculture and the FDA. Con Ag never gets mentioned, or Dow. These are all people, this chemical alliance that is destroying our food, and thus, is it any wonder that people can't think very clearly?
Well, exactly. I've written books during the Bush administration when I was describing the number of people from Monsanto that were in all these key areas that relate to the business areas that Monsanto is involved in. See, the environmental movement has been hijacked. Indeed, there may be elements that it was in many ways created from the start. as a diversion and a vehicle for this control system, because they've bought the lie. They bought the lie of human-caused global warming, now called climate change as temperatures fall. But they need to realize that these people that are selling global warming are actually environmental assassins. That's what the control system is. It's what I called years and years ago, decades ago, take, make, and throw away. This is what the system does. It takes more and more resources every year. It turns it into more things, sell more things, and then throw away more things. And in terms of the effect on our bodies of all this chemical and electromagnetic pollution, it distorts the human body as a chemical and vibrational electromagnetic organism. And if you have, for instance, a computer system and it is imbalanced because it's got a virus in it or it's not working properly, what happens? It doesn't process information. It doesn't think straight like it could. It doesn't work things out like it could. And, of course, the evidence is endless and overwhelming of what chemical pollution in food and drink does to us emotionally. And when we're emotionally disturbed, what's the first thing that happens? We stop thinking straight. So these attacks on the human body that you're talking about through food and drink and this electromagnetic microwave fog that we live in the cities now are all coldly, calculatedly designed to destabilize us as a thinking, balancedly emotional being that can actually see what's going on and can calmly think and calmly understand what's happening in the world. They want us in this imbalanced state so we don't think straight.
And that's to say, David, and just so if somebody's tuning in for the first time, and that's not to say that everybody in the food industry or something is involved in this. They're compartmentalized. They're driven, again, by the carrot and the stick, the paycheck, whatever it is, especially the worse the economy is, David, the easier it is to control people. But they're not all in on it. They would be if they happened to look and notice what was going on around them and what they were a part of, what their life force was contributing to. But it only takes a few people who have a complete centralization of our food and our water to pull this off. Now, right now, they have a food bill, which has gone through Congress. I believe it's going to the Senate, and then the alleged president is going to be signing it, which is it's a food safety bill, which is really a food control bill. You know, when we hear that word safety, security, I always put the word control in there, David. And this is the biggest bite of Codex Alimentarius we've seen yet. Now, I've got a friend of mine, and I've talked to you about them before. They are very like-minded, and they sponsor this show for years and years. They're called the Enerfood, E-N-E-R, like energy food. And this is a way to break up these poisons and to flush them out of your system. This is your best tool to preserve your mind, your body, your soul, and the ability to focus and get out there and stay free. And so I want to bring Darren up here real quick, and then we'll have the whole second hour with you, David Icke, but I'd love to get your input as well. Darren Craddock, of course, with Enerfood.com, all natural superfood, totally organic. And if the food safety bill goes through, Darren, there's a good chance we might not be able to have Enerfood anymore.
Well, I'm not going to be over my dead body, mate. I'll tell you that.
It's Limey Hour here on Deadline Live. Yes.
I am. Well, it will be because, I mean, basically we have to stand strong. We can't allow this stuff to happen because they've continued to take away rights and freedoms from us week after week, day after day, year after year for so long that we have to stand together, and that's why it's so important for people to listen to what you have to say and what David has to say and several other shows out there, too, that are whistleblowing about the truth, you know, about basically how the food industry is polluting and contaminating our food supply.
Yeah.
All to their advantage.
Well, I mean, right from the first cup of coffee you have when you get up, which is pure poison, go ahead and go buy Folgers for $2 or whatever a jar at your local supermarket. You get what you pay for. Again, garbage in, garbage out. Or they could use your all-organic fair trade coffee. You deal right with the farmers. You get the best beans. It's infused with rainforest polysaccharides, so it improves your immune system. Again, it makes you feel good and not bad, even though with your average cup of coffee, I mean, I guess you could shoot some methamphetamines and you'll wake up. You know, what's the difference here? So here's an alternative, and a healthy alternative, which will get your biorhythms up to speed, which will clear the toxins out of your body, improve your immune system so that you're not a sitting duck for the real H1N1 if that should ever come down the line, which I guess they're telling us is coming in the form of superbugs. Darren, let me get this out because I talked to Steve. He said for today only, the people that missed the 5% discount on all your great products can get that again today. One day only, just today, another 5% discount on top of what you're already getting with our Deadline Live discount page for enerfood.com. So that's a great thing, Darren, because a lot of people, they missed the deadline and they want another shot at it. So here you go, folks, another 5% off. Get as much as you can. You'll save more money.
Yeah, and basically, remember there is a coupon code. It's Deadline, DEADLINE. When you go through Jack's site, so go to deadlinelive.com and
David,
put in the coupon.
David, you use a lot of these products. You use different products to help yourself get through the day, and so you're not a sucker to the food.
Well, I have a great friend who lives just down the road from me called Mike Lambert, who runs an operation called the Shen Clinic, and he's really at the cutting edge of some of this stuff. So we have conversations like this regularly, and he keeps me supplied with the kind of things that we're talking about. But this subject in itself is confirmation that there's a conspiracy going on, because you can look at one side of it, which is transnational corporations putting more and more additives and chemicals and stuff in our food and what we drink, and you can say, oh yeah, but they're just doing it for money, mate, and that's what they're doing it for, and all that stuff, and you can hide away from the truth by whistling in the dark with that stuff. But on the other side of this, on the other side from what they're putting in our food, that there is this other element which is targeting those who do not wish to consume food like that, who have realized what it does to the body. And this is where Codex Alimentarius comes in. This is where this attack on small farmers and even growing your own food, that's coming big time. Indeed, it's already unfolding. The excuse of food safety is being used to do this. And, I've seen this stuff written down in their projections from people within this control system, that's exactly what.
Well, David, let me pop in here, David.
Transnational corporations in total control of the food chain.
Let me pop in here, David, because this is what Michael Taylor, former Monsanto lobbyist, now at the FDA, our food czar, this is what he's saying. You can have aspartame, you can have MSG, you can have all these neurotoxins and excitotoxins, but you just can't have Enerfood. You just can't use herbs and whatever else naturally to put in your body, which has been proven to work, as you say, for thousands of years. Folks, I need you to get on the bandwagon here. Do something to protect yourself, David, because I think a lot of people out there, they spend so much time working and just trying to survive. They're stopping off and getting these poison hamburgers. As we say on this show, Burger King is owned by Mitt Romney's company, Bain Incorporated. Do you want them cooking your meals? Do you really? And if you do, what are you doing to counterbalance that, to get yourself in balance? And that's the most important thing, and that's what Enerfood does for you. So, Darren, I appreciate you guys extending this offer. Give people the phone number so that they can call and call right now or get this 5% discount till midnight tonight.
Sure, it's enerfood.com, ENERFOOD.com, or call us at 866-762-9238, 866-762-9238.
Pop through my website, deadlinelive.info, put deadline in the code, get that discount, get it now. They can't keep doing this, folks, because their prices are going up. They're trying to really get this to everybody. See, the thing is, Darren, you and Steve, you guys really believe in this, and you are like-minded, and this is a mission for you to help people, and it isn't all about making money, or you put a lot less product in your food and fillers and things like that, like everybody else does. So this is the best
Jack,
product
we have
found.
no fillers whatsoever in our product, And we both drive 20-year-old cars, so we're in it for
I use it religiously. This is how I'm able to read 3 books a week and stay focused on the task at hand and help my fellow man and my fellow woman and people around the world obtain the higher consciousness that you can get. This will set your brain free. Everybody that's taken it agrees. Enerfood is an absolute miracle. All their related products, you can click right through to my website, deadlinelive.info. Darren, great to have you. We'll talk to you here this Friday.
Thank you so much, Jack.
All right. And, David, you've got about a 6-minute break. We've got the top of the hour news. Second hour with David Icke. We'll get into some really intense stuff, some intense work. His new book is out. It is absolutely amazing. I recommend it to everybody. Human Race, Get Off Your Knees. The Lion Sleeps No More. He pulls no punches. DavidIcke.com. You can get it there or anywhere. We'll be right back for the second hour of Deadline Live right after this. Stay tuned and stay bold. We are locked and loaded for the Propaganda War, second hour of Deadline Live, coming your way this 29th day of September, allegedly, 2010. I'm Jack Blood, your narrator, your radio gun reporting for the next hour. This is wrenchrradio.com, and once again, thanks to all of the great affiliates out there for picking us up. Real treat for you today, 100 minutes with David Icke. We're about halfway through that. David Icke is on the air with us today. His new book is Human Race, Get Off Your Knees. The Lion Sleeps No More. Thank you, David, so much for all your time today.
That's a pleasure, Jack.
Let's do a little bit more in the five senses, though I have a feeling you'll be able to take us into into much deeper meanings of some of these things, which is why we love having you on. The biggest story or the biggest diversion or the biggest division here over the last couple of months in this country has been Koran burnings. Some people actually went out and burned the 9/11 Commission report, which I thought was creative. Mosques at Ground Zero, sponsored by Council on Foreign Relations guys. And then, of course, you know, the division of races. The Tea Party is racist, even though Jacob Schiff from Kuhn and Loeb, a big Rockefeller banking organization, founded the NAACP. But people are running around hating each other. They're doing exactly what they're told in many instances. But, again, a lot of people not falling for it, the lion wide awake. Yeah, well,
it's as old as manipulation, mass manipulation goes, Jack. It's divide and rule. These control system and the families behind it are terrified of humanity coming together, putting down these manufactured fault lines of religion and income brackets and all these different things, color, race, all of it, and realizing that actually this is not a conspiracy to control Jewish people or middle-class Americans or South Africans. It's there to control us all and to stop that unity of response, because, you know, when you've got 7 billion people on the planet at the moment, so they tell us anyway, I don't know who counts them, but and you've got a tiny, tiny number in full knowledge who are manipulating that 7 billion in the direction that they are, centralization of power and all the destabilization of us mentally and emotionally in the way we've discussed already, then the few are in a very, very vulnerable position. We think that it's all powerful, or many people do, that this is all powerful. It's not. It is in a very, very tenuous situation, totally. That's why it's always terrified and insecure, because all it is based on is a significant number of that 7 billion, not waking up to seeing what's going on, and B, then doing nothing about it if it realizes it. And once we start to see through the manipulation and see the agenda that's unfolding and see what the goal is and the methods being used to take us there, and they're all available now and exposed now, then this control system will be shown to be what it really is, which is dependent on so many things not happening, like humanity remaining in a state of closed-minded, asleep, coma states. This is another key reason why they're bombarding us with these food additives and other poisons in the air and what we drink and all the rest of it. It's to destabilize our ability to think straight and see it, because they know that once we do, it's game over. It's like that wonderful speech in that movie Bug's Life, where the grasshopper stands up and talks about how they're controlling all these ants, and then somebody said, well, they're only ants, and, well, one of those ants stood up to me, he said, last time we went there. Oh, but it's only one ant. And then he said, one ant. If one ant will stand up, they might all stand up. Yeah. Those ants outnumber us 100 to 1, and if ever they figure that out, there goes our way of life. And,
well, you know, we used to play that.
To figure it out, but more people need to open their minds and figure it out, and then do something about it.
And we've got to escape this perilous circle that they've got us in, chasing our tails. We used to play that clip, by the way, all the time on this show because we, like you, believe that that's exactly the remedy, the formula we need to break out of all of this. You look at it, though, and I've got these filters in me that I've learned from people like you and others and all the research and the work we've done over all these years, and I'm very skeptical about the things I see at face value, so I dig a little, and I find that, for instance, the guy, the Imam, Mr. Raouf, who's putting together the mosque at Ground Zero, worked for both administrations as a kind of an ambassador. He's a member of the Council on Foreign Relations. He's funded by the Ford, Rockefeller, and Gloria Steinem operations. Again, this is a guy that is an establishment, quote-unquote, Muslim, if he's not a complete Luciferian himself, who's in the middle of this. Then you look at the guy that's threatening to burn Korans. Not only is he a school chum of Rush Limbaugh, which is maybe not as important as the fact that he is from something called the Dove Church, which has got to ring a bell with you.
Yeah, the symbol of the goddess of Babylon. But these people, you know, there's two types of people they use. They're idiots who they just use because they have a certain belief system and they just use that.
Or they got something on them.
To get them to behave the way they want them to. But they don't have to get them to behave the way they want them to because they know that they're in a belief system that they're going to behave this way. So we want that, so let's put him in there. And then there are the others, and this guy involving Ground Zero is clearly one of the latter. They are in full awareness that they're manipulating, and they're in full awareness who is manipulating them and what the end is. And you know, this idea of putting a mosque in Ground Zero, it's to stir up, divide and rule. You know, we've got to start realizing whether we're Christian or Jew or Muslim or whatever, or none of them, that we are having our belief systems played off against each other to keep us disunited. And while we're fighting among ourselves, we're focused on that and not seeing what's going on behind our backs while we're fighting among ourselves. We've got to stop this nonsense. If someone wants to follow the Islamic religion, good luck to them, as long as they don't try to impose it on anybody else that doesn't want it. And if we can be at peace with people having different views to us without thinking we have to impose our view of reality on everyone else, then we can actually have different views and still be in harmony. You know, okay, you're a Muslim, you know, okay, well, let's go and have a beer. I wouldn't have. Let's go and have a chat or something.
Yeah.
I'd have a beer. You have a cup of coffee, mate.
David, Baptist, different sects of the Baptist Church can't even get along together. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. There are people in the Patriot movement that can't get along together. I mean, I never have a problem with people like you who are honest and upfront and cool. I always have a problem with the people who are behind the scenes making phone calls in the middle of the night, blackballing people or whatever. And we've got this, and this is something we've got to understand as adults, that this is how people are. People really are this way, and you're going to find this everywhere. There is no utopia, at least in the world that we live now. Now, David, I got to ask you again to back off that phone because you're really coming in a little fuzzy and overmodulating. I've got about 2 minutes in this segment. I did want to talk about two things before we move on to the more deeper research you've got about the moon and other things in your book here. The first is the Rothschild technique, and that's all about money. You've got a lot of that stuff in your book. And the second one is that the UFOs are coming here on October 13th, and they're going to be congregating over every major city. So says a former NASA worker who has a book. Had a lot of people talking about this, that full disclosure will happen here now any day. So let's tackle both of those. In the 2 minutes we have left, why don't we start with the Rothschild technique, and then we'll go to the UFOs coming to pick us up.
Well, the Rothschilds are right at the heart of the spider, and you know, so often we're looking at presidents and we're looking at prime ministers and heads of the World Bank, but these are just front men for the House of Rothschild. Zionism is actually a secret society. It was created by the Rothschilds and it's controlled by the Rothschilds to this day. And so you've got a situation where Zionist agents, Rothschild Zionism, I call it, to keep underpinning.
David, let's pick up there when we come back. I got to go to break.
Okay.
We got the rest of the show with David Icke. Phone lines are open. Stay with us, folks. David Icke is with us today. DavidIcke.com. ICKE, if you don't already know. David and I have been friends for many, many years now. Learned a lot from him. Hopefully I've passed that on to so many people. Human race, get off your knees. The lion sleeps no more. And David, you're still on tour, aren't you, David? People can maybe catch you around the world giving one of your fantastic 7-hour, very funny, very entertaining lectures.
Yeah, I'm coming to New York. I'm talking in New York on the 17th of October, and then I'm going straight to San Francisco to talk on the 23rd. And I'm talking around Europe, in Spain, and in Portugal and the Netherlands. And I had an amazing experience last weekend, Jack, because I was asked to go and speak in the Czech Republic, right in the center, the heart of Europe. And I went there. It was the 51st country I've been to, actually, researching this and talking since this began. And I'd never been there before. The mainstream media, as always, didn't want to know. They didn't even speak my language. The talk had to be simultaneously translated to the audience via headphones. And I was back behind where the arena was, so I never saw the arena until I walked onto the stage. And when I walked onto the stage, I literally stopped in mid-track. I could not believe how many people were there. It was extraordinary. And I just thought in that moment, hey, you know, we are making a difference here. I know it's not in the mainstream media yet, and many people that work in the mainstream areas of life will think, well, there's loads and loads of people that are still asleep. The majority still are, but my goodness me, is there an awakening going on? And eventually...
Well, David, it is, and look, first of all, I always say this to my guests, especially people like you, you know, where would we be without all the activism, without the knowledge that we have put out? And then go think about that for a minute. And then secondly, you know, we hear Rush Limbaugh now, El Lushbo, as I call him, talking about how they print money out of thin air at the Federal Reserve. You know, you look at Glenn Beck, and half of that show is the show that I did here 5, 6, 7 years ago, and that what you've been talking about for 20, 30 years. So we are having an effect. It's just that they discredit us so that they can usurp the information and be, as you call, a steam valve for the revolution, which is certain to come when people really realize what's going on, especially with our economy. So again, I'll go back to the Rothschild technique, if you could, and let's do a couple of minutes on that.
Well, you know, as I was saying, the Rothschilds created Zionism. Is why I call it Rothschild Zionism. And they put their agents in power all over the world. They controlled the Bush administration through the neocons. They control the Obama administration through people like Rahm Emanuel, David Axelrod. In the Treasury, there's Timothy Geithner and Larry Summers. Peter Orszag, the budget director, been replaced by Jacob Law now, that's what Obama wants. And so it goes on. Head of the World Bank, head of the IMF, head of the European Central Bank, they're all Rothschild Zionists. And the key to the Rothschild manipulation is the manipulation of money, the creation of theoretical money out of nothing, and then charging interest on it. And, you know, what the Rothschilds have done, Jack, is over the last 100 years or so, is they have worked and been very, very successful at hiding the extent of their power. Up to around the turn of the 20th century, it was pretty widely known, certainly in the 19th century, that the Rothschilds were funding both sides in wars, causing the wars, funding both sides in the wars, and then lending all the countries involved money after the war to rebuild their economies, which the wars have destroyed. And what that did was create a situation behind the scenes where basically countries were in hock to the Rothschild money system and have been ever since. If we knew the extent of the Rothschild power in its true sense of controlling governments, owning whole countries, we would be absolutely staggered. Yeah. So the Rothschilds have all these masks on their face. So we say, hey, that Goldman Sachs, it was responsible for this, it was responsible for that. Look what it did in Greece when creating the economic catastrophe there. Rothschild equals Goldman Sachs. Rothschild equals J.P. Morgan. Rothschild equals the Federal Reserve. Rothschild equals Obama's Treasury Department via people like Geithner, Summers, and Orszag before, and then Jacob Lewis taking over, the new budget director. This is what we're looking at. And you know, you look at 9/11, Rothschild Zionist, Larry Silverstein, and Frank Lowy, who bought the lease on the World Trade Center in a deal with the head of the New York Port Authority, Louis Eisenberg, Rothschild Zionist, head of the CIA at the time, Rothschild Zionist. And, you know, if we look at the fact that Israel gets this fantastic amount of America's taxpayers' money every year, the fact that it's got the biggest F-16 fleet outside America, and it's a sliver of land in North Africa, what's going on? It's because one hand of the Rothschilds, called the United States government, hands the money and the weaponry and planes to the other hand of the Rothschild, called Israel. And this is the same in Britain. Exactly the same situation is in Britain. The Prime Minister of Britain now is David Cameron, Rothschild Zionist. We just had that new leader of the Labour Party I mentioned, Ed Miliband, Rothschild Zionist, and it's the same in country after country. It's a secret society, and what they've done is brilliantly equate Zionism with Jewish people, so that when you talk about Zionism, you must be anti-Jewish. What they don't tell you is the number of Jewish people in the world who not only don't agree with Zionism, but vehemently oppose it. It's a secret society. It's nothing to do with the benefit of Jewish people. Indeed, they have used Jewish people mercilessly, the Rothschilds, to get their ends. And
it's a pretty diabolical front. It's a very diabolical front. Debt, slavery always leads to wars. Gudel Schnapper, Mayor Amschel Rothschild's wife, said shortly before she died in 1849, "If my sons did not want wars, there would be none." More with David Icke right after this. Stay tuned. Deadline Live. I'm Jack Blood. Well, David Icke is with us today. DavidIcke.com. The new book. I can't tell you enough how amazing this work is. And I know how hard David works on this and how much he's up against writing these books. This is a dictionary of so much. It's 700 pages long, so much that you need to know, with full-color pictures for those of you who like to look at the pictures. Nothing wrong with that. Human race, get off your knees. The lion sleeps no more. And David has been doing lectures all over the world regarding this new information, and a lot of the information that he's been talking about for years and years and years, when they said he was nutters and now agree that he was right. We'll get into that in a second, David, because one of the top physicists in the world now agrees with you on alternate realities. But we got to go to this. Extraterrestrials are here. The full disclosure will happen this October 13th, as they will be parked over all the major cities in the world. This, according to somebody who used to work at NASA, forget his name. I know you got a comment on this. We covered it from a kind of a Project Blue Book angle, but what do you got, David?
Well, for a start, there is no such thing as disclosure from a government controlled by the very network that we've been talking about all these years. There's a great difference between a government telling you something and a government disclosing the truth. And, of course, they've been hiding the extraterrestrial visitations to Earth and the connections and many other things that we should have known about for a long, long time. And, you know, I've been writing for years that actually there's an extraterrestrial race or races that is actually behind the control system ultimately, and for which these bloodline families like the Rockefellers, the royal families, the Rothschilds are just middlemen and women within human society, acting as like vehicles to manipulate human society. Well, people don't realize who the ultimate controllers are, because they're not the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and the people like that ultimately, though they appear to be at one level, and they are at one level. But they've been talking for a while about the fact that they're going to disclose that there is a non-human race interacting with the Earth and all the rest of it. And they may well do eventually, but to be honest, I can't, how shall I say, think I can't feel in my water all these kind of craft over the cities. I can't sync with that in any way, shape, or form. But certainly, as we've been talking about, and others have been talking about for a long, long time, there is an operation in the background which could well be played where you're looking for a common enemy to unite people on a global level. And so, as I think Reagan said, what would happen if there was an extraterrestrial threat to the Earth? We'd all unite. And of course, on one level, that's what the control system wants. It wants the world to unite, not in the sense that we are talking about, but in the sense of allowing the central control of the world, right, with the equivalent of a war cabinet on a global level, you might call it, with a central global control of the armed forces, etc. That's exactly what
could be just the problem we need to get us right to that global solution.
It could well be. Yes, absolutely.
I had Stanton Friedman on a couple of weeks ago, and we asked him about this too, specifically Project Bluebeam, where you would fake UFOs in order to get control over a region or, in fact, the entire Earth. And he claimed he'd never heard of it and wouldn't know about anything like that. I didn't think he was very genuine when he said that, but that's certainly something that can be done. We've seen that they were going to use it with, I believe it was Mongoose, in Cuba, and then they had to planned again to do something like this with Allah coming down from the clouds in the Middle East, David. So it's not that they don't contemplate these things, but it would have to really be the refuge of last resort, wouldn't it?
I think so, yeah. And also, of course, with the holographic technology they have, they can project things into the sky that would seem to be one thing when actually they're just a projection. I mean, for goodness sake, what we call the physical world is holographic. Even some scientists are now beginning to realize this. Actually, when you study it in any depth, it's obvious that this is holographic. Therefore, holographic technology would have no problem projecting holographic images into a holographic reality, and we would look at them and read them as if they were like part of the reality when they weren't at all. And this is a really important area, I think, for people to realize that if you want to keep people in a box of perception, then you keep them in a box of suppression of what is actually possible. Because then, when people like you, me, and others talk about what's there in the background or what they're doing and how they're doing it, people say that's impossible. No one can do that. No, you believe it can't be done. It's a perception, but it actually can be done. And of course, technology is being used in the background that we don't see in the public arena, that is light years ahead of anything that we publicly know about, and therefore they can do things and we can think they're real when actually it's just technology at work.
Sure, and technology so far advanced to what the average person, even the person in the know, understands to be true. Some would even say it's sacred geometry, and some would say, as you've relayed here, that it could be alien technology being kept under wraps and then revealed as they continue their totalitarian tiptoe. I love this because I love physics. I love math. I'll tell you what, David, I've dabbled in theoretical physics. I have dabbled in theoretical math. And no one ever called me a heretic or nuts. But when I dabble in theoretical politics or conspiracy theories, or debunk them, as the case may be with 9/11, I'm crazy. I need to be locked up, which one of my friends actually was at Ground Zero at 9/11 this year. Michio Kaku, who I respect as one of the top theoretical physicists, basically just reiterated what you've been saying for the last 20 years. Talk about that.
Well, yes, I was sent this YouTube video a few weeks ago, and it had me talking on a television program at the height of my Icke and Nutter period in 1991, when I literally couldn't walk down the road or go anywhere in Britain without being laughed at by the people in general, not the odd person. And at that time, I talked about the fact that this reality that we're experiencing as the physical world is only a frequency range, like a television station or a radio station. And it was sharing the same space as all the other realities, worlds, if you like, just as the television and radio stations broadcasting to an area share the same space without interfering with each other unless they're very close on the dial. And that's what we call ghosts are and stuff like that. They are realities that are very close to this one, enough to interfere with it so some people can see it, but not enough to be the same as it, so they look, as solid as you and me. It's a form of visual interference, if you like. And then next to this clip where I'm talking about that in 1991, there's Kaku saying exactly the same in 2008, almost using the same words, and it was just extraordinary, really. And the cutting edge of physics is now having to look at the fact that this reality is illusory. Now, this is a key point.
Well, let's pick up, because we've got some audio interference on a different frequency right now. Our commercials are coming.
Okay.
This video we're talking about all at davidicke.com. We'll pick up and then talk about what's going on the moon right after this. Stay with us, Deadline Live. Well, this is the song that David opens up with in his lectures around the world. Amazing stuff. Muse, of course. Oh, they play this at big football games now. National television. It's working. It's cool to be awake now, folks. Right here, Muse, Uprising. Thanks for joining us. We will prevail. All right, if you're not in the mood already, you are now. That just proves that you can go out and you can use music and art to tell people what's going on, and you could still be successful and make money and all the rest. So you don't have to throw your career down the well just to... but you got to be creative and you got to be good, and that's what Muse is. David Icke is with us. David Icke's website is David, I-C-K-E, davidicke.com. And you can go over there and you can find out where he's coming at a town near you. If you can still get tickets, do it. Everywhere he goes, it just sells out. It's incredible. It is an amazing PowerPoint lecture that's both funny and extremely informative and mind-expanding. It's well worth the price of admission. David, I can't believe after all these years you're still out doing it and you're getting bigger than ever before, and I'm proud to know you. That whole thing about physics, world's top physics guy, Michio Kaku, talked about it in 2008, exactly what David Icke had talked about here for years and years and years. That video at davidicke.com. Well, David, you've been very generous with your time. I got to tell you, when I heard about this book coming out and that there was information in there about the moon being an alien control satellite, I certainly was very skeptical, but you taught me to keep an open mind, and I got to tell you, after reading what you actually wrote about it, I'm still not buying it. Let's say that, but it's definitely a possibility. The way you put it, do you want to cover some of that info for my listeners?
Yeah. Over the last 20 years, I mean, I had an amazing wake-up 20 years ago. It's a long story, but a process started 20 years ago that I've become very, very familiar with, and that is I'll be sitting in this seat here in my office where I write the books, and suddenly the atmosphere changes, and suddenly I'll get this insight into something, and from that moment, information about that insight, if you like, starts coming at me from all angles. And when I was writing the new book, I wasn't going down the road of the moon at all. I was just putting the rest of it together. And I sat in this very chair, and the atmosphere in the room changed, and suddenly I just got this insight: the moon is not real. By that I mean it's not a natural satellite. It's quite possibly a hollowed-out planetoid. And I put a few key words in relating to that after I had this insight into a net find, and I found this book, Who Built the Moon, by these two researchers who were looking at the fact that the moon cannot be what we call real or natural, and that the amazing, staggering mathematics and geometry there is that connects and synchronizes the sun, the moon, and the Earth. Doesn't work with other planets and moons, but just our moon, Earth, and the sun. And then I started to realize, because it's like everything, Jack, you're born into the world, and you kind of, for at least most people, for a long time, accept that what's there is how it is. So the moon comes up, and then it goes through its cycle, and all the rest of it. It's the moon, mate, isn't it? But then when I started looking at this in detail, I was shocked myself at what I was realizing, the fact that the moon shouldn't be there. It's too big. As the authors of that book who built the moon say, the moon is bigger than it should be, apparently older than it should be, much lighter in mass than it should be. It occupies an unlikely orbit and is so extraordinary that all existing explanations for the presence of the moon are fraught with difficulties, and none of them could be considered remotely watertight. What you also realize is actually, in truth, they haven't got a clue where the moon came from. If the Earth had a satellite, it's postured that it should be maybe very, very, very small, maybe 30 miles across or something. The moon's 2,160, and as one, more than one, but certainly one scientist I quote in the book said, the best explanation for the moon is observational error. The moon doesn't exist. And then the evidence started to mount that the moon is hollow. When the moon has been hit by really powerful, smacks from various means, it's rung like a bell, to quote NASA scientists, or rung like a gong, and it's very, very likely that the moon is, to a large extent, hollow, and inside the moon we would be staggered if we realized. And what came to mind was the concept, the principle anyway, of the Death Star in the Star Wars movies, which of course were created by that big-time insider, George Lucas. And the more that I put the information together, the more clear it was to me that the basis of what I'm saying here is correct. I mean, one scientist said of the moon is made inside out. In other words, the stuff that's on the surface of the moon should be inside. And there was two Soviet scientists from the Soviet Academy of Sciences in the 1970s that wrote a detailed article saying the very same thing, that actually the moon is some kind of hollowed out planetoid, and that the outside of the moon was at one time on the inside. And when I then called Credo Mutwa, the Zulu shaman in South Africa, who's nearly 90 now, and it's just a library of African myths and legends, I didn't tell him what conclusion I'd come to. I just said to him, can you tell me any African Zulu legends about the moon? And he said, we say the moon is an egg, symbolically, because we say it's been hollowed out. And then he tells me about the fact that the legend is that these two brothers, Wawani and Mpanku, hollowed out the moon and rolled it across the heavens to the earth, and when it came, they created great catastrophes because of the effect of the moon on the earth. And of course, all these ancient legends you see over and over again all around the world of the fact that there were great geological catastrophes in the ancient world, and the earth turned over, which is what it would do if the moon moved in. And this story of Wawani and Mpanku, these brothers who they say were leaders of the Chitahuri, the reptilian race, the story pans out in theme exactly like the story is of Enlil and Enki, of the so-called Anunnaki in the Sumerian tablets, where they talk about this non-human race coming and turning the humanity into a slave race. It's the same story, but using different names from a black African perspective. But anyway, having put it all together and gathering more information all the time, I'm absolutely convinced the Earth is controlled from the moon. Because the effect of the moon, never mind anything being broadcast from the moon, what I call the moon matrix, which I explain in the book, just the moon being there physically is having fundamental effects on humanity. If, for instance, fundamental effects on hormonal levels, and hormonal levels relate to emotions and the human psyche in general. The third eye, like the pineal gland and the pituitary gland, are fundamentally affected by the moon. Of course, whole tides are brought in and out by the moon, and we're 60-70% water, so obviously they can have some effect on us even on that level. And when you put it all together, and again, there's so many dots to connect before the apparently incredible and ludicrous sounds starts to take on logical sense. I'm as convinced that this is true as anything I've come across in 20 years.
Well, I mean, you've got to at least allow space in your mind for the possibility of things like this, David, because how many people would believe that they'd be begin microchipping our pets and then us,
Exactly.
40 years ago? You've got to keep an open mind. Now, I could debate this with you as a theoretical physicist, but then I would be posting a theory. For some reason, though, I'm reminded of the Truman Show when I hear you talking about this.
Well, I actually mentioned that in the book, Jack, because I watched the Truman Show for the first time when I was putting this stuff about the moon together, and it's amazing where people haven't seen it. It's a reality TV show. This guy Jim Carrey's born into it, doesn't know, thinks it's real, and the control system they're controlling this show from, it looks just like the moon. I thought that's very symbolic, to say the least.
Well, they hide this stuff right out in front of plain sight. They've done this for years. David, tomorrow, you need to read this book. I think you'll really enjoy it. It's another great book from Trine Day and my good friend Chris Milligan over there. Doug Valentine, The Strength of the Pack, the personalities, politics, and espionage intrigues that shape the DEA. It's the truth about the DEA that they don't want you to know about in the war on drugs, which you cover extensively as well. Look what they're doing to Lindsay Lohan. I've actually got to get out and defend Lindsay Lohan as much as I despise her character. I don't like people like that, these celebrity-worshipping prostitutes. But, what they've done to her because she is, taken some drugs can happen to all of us, and I think that was the message. So Doug Valentine joining us tomorrow, The Strength of the Pack, that should be good, and Federal Jack from federaljack.com joining us. David, it has been really a pleasure to have you. I wish you all the best. I know you've gone through some tough times, but
Thanks, mate.
It's going to make you stronger, brother. I know it will.
Yeah, what don't kill you makes you stronger, eh?
I hope so, because that's really my whole life. The great David Icke. There he goes, folks. Go out and get this book, will you? Go find a way to shave off your monthly money. Don't go to the movie one week and get Human Race. Get off your knees. The Lion Sleeps No More. It is so fun to read. You guys will have your noses in this for quite a while, and we'll talk about it on the show. Thank you, David. Best to you.